Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really focused exploration of a critical and sensitive topic, post-traumatic stress disorder.
PTSD, right?
And specifically, we want to look at the foundational sort of cognitive steps toward real recovery. We know this is heavy material, but our goal is to really distill some clarity here.
That's absolutely right. Our source material for this deep dive is very focused, drawing heavily on principles from affective therapies like cognitive processing therapy.
Okay.
So our mission is really pure knowledge extraction. We want you to understand not just the clinical description of PTSD, but the specific mechanisms, the symptoms, the biology, and maybe most critically, the belief systems that keep people stuck in that cycle.
No. Okay, so let's unpack this. I think the best place to start is with the landscape of the disorder itself. To really get PTSD, we need to look at it through 4 distinct clusters of symptoms.
It's like 4 different ways the trauma memory makes its presence felt.
Yeah.
And the first cluster is probably the most recognizable: intrusive symptoms. Think of these as the memory, or even just fragments of it, actively intruding on your daily life.
Like a pop-up ad you just can't close.
That's a great analogy. It's not just choosing to think about the event. It's an unwanted memory, an image, maybe a sound or smell that just surfaces.
Even when you're trying to focus on something else entirely, and the sources mentioned, these often come with physical sensations.
Oh, absolutely. The feeling of panic, that tightness in your chest from the original event, it can all come rushing back with the memory.
And what triggers these?
Well, the triggers can be insidious. I mean, sometimes they're obvious, like an anniversary or a specific place, but often they're much more subtle.
Like sensory inputs.
Exactly. A certain shade of light, a song, a tone of voice. Your nervous system links these seemingly random cues back to the danger.
And the most extreme version of this
Is a flashback, where the intrusion is so powerful, you genuinely feel that the traumatic incident is happening again right now.
That's terrifying. And that feeling of the present being completely invaded by the past, it leads us right into the second cluster, doesn't it?
It does. Arousal or reactivity.
What we're calling the keyed-up body.
Yes. If the intrusive memories are the mind revisiting the threat, arousal is the body permanently living in that threat. Your nervous system just stays activated. It's on edge all the time.
So what does that look like in daily life?
It manifests as being easily startled, struggling with sleep and concentration, or having these sudden, overwhelming, angry outbursts that seem totally out of proportion.
It sounds utterly exhausting. I mean, if you're constantly operating at 80% stress, you have no capacity left for anything else.
You don't. And the sources also point to behavioral things here, like hypervigilance.
That constant need to check over your shoulder even when you know you're safe.
Right. And sometimes the body's desperate search for a way out of that feeling can lead to reckless or self-destructive behavior.
Like what?
Driving way too fast, seeking out high-stakes situations. It's almost like a physical demand for action because the system feels like it's perpetually stuck in an emergency.
Okay, so the first 2 clusters are the mind and body being constantly on guard. The third cluster, changes in mood and thinking, seems to be about the long-term fallout.
This is where the trauma starts acting like a negative filter over your entire world.
Your fundamental beliefs get shattered.
They do. Beliefs about safety, trust, self-worth, and what results are these profound, enduring negative emotions. Persistent guilt, overwhelming shame, chronic fear.
The sources really highlight this sense of social and emotional loss here. People describe feeling numb.
Emotionally numb, yeah, unable to feel joy, or sometimes even sadness fully, or just feeling completely disconnected from the world.
Like looking through a window at everyone else living their lives.
That's a very common description. And crucially, this is the cluster where blame takes hold. Because the trauma can destroy that belief that the world is fair, the mind struggles to make sense of it all.
So you default to blaming yourself.
Yourself or others. For not stopping it, for not preventing it. You're trying to find some logic in the horror, even if objectively you had 0 power at the time.
That attempt to regain control through blame. Wow. That's a huge insight. And it brings us to the 4th cluster, which the sources say is the true engine driving all of this.
Yes. Avoiding reminders.
This is the big one.
It is. And it's important to say, avoidance is a survival strategy. It's not a character flaw. When these painful feelings intrude, pushing them away gives immediate relief.
But it's a short-term fix, with a devastating long-term cost.
That's the trap. It becomes the mechanism that locks you in the cycle.
Let's talk about the different kinds of avoidance, because they can be really subtle.
Right. It's not just, not driving past the scene of the accident. Emotional avoidance is far more pervasive.
How does that manifest?
Deliberate numbing using alcohol, substances, food, or a very common one, extreme distraction.
Staying busy.
Constantly busy, working 80-hour mints, studying relentlessly, anything, so there isn't a single quiet moment for your brain to process what happened.
And the material mentions something fascinating about chronic physical pain.
Yes, that avoidance can sometimes show up as chronic headaches, back pain, other physical ailments. It's almost as if the brain is replacing emotional processing with a physical distraction.
So what's the ultimate consequence of all this effort to avoid?
That's the pivot point. The cost of that short-term relief is that it completely prevents recovery. Avoidance locks the trauma in place. When you avoid the memory, you never give your system the chance to learn that the event is actually over.
The sources mentioned a concept, the recovery curve. Can you sort of walk us through that visually?
Imagine stress symptoms spiking right after a trauma. That's the peak of a curve. If your system processes it, those symptoms rise and then they naturally fall over time. That's recovery.
But with avoidance.
Avoidance acts like a ceiling. The symptoms might dull a little, but they never truly go away. They just hit a high plateau. You avoid the peak pain of processing, but in doing so, you flatline your recovery.
So the goal isn't to erase the event. That's impossible. It's history.
Yeah.
The goal is to process it so the memory no longer has this immense power over your daily life.
Exactly. You stop feeling like you're fighting the event in the present moment. And to understand why avoidance is such a powerful trap, we have to go deeper.
Into the nervous system.
Into the biology, the trauma-brain connection.
We all know fight or flight, but the source material really emphasizes a third response. Freeze.
Yes, and it's so often misunderstood. Freezing is an ancient automatic defense mechanism. It's what happens when fighting or fleeing just isn't possible. It's like playing dead.
And it's involuntary.
Completely involuntary. And it's often accompanied by dissociation, where you feel emotionally or even physically disconnected, like you're watching it happen from outside your body. That's so important for people to hear. It's not a choice or a failure. It's your body's hardwired system trying to survive.
Precisely. Now, let's look at the brain mechanics during that extreme stress.
Okay, let's use some clear analogies here.
So we have the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's smoke detector. It's super efficient, but sometimes a bit reckless. Its only job is to spot a threat.
And when trauma happens,
The amygdala just screams, "Danger! Sound the alarm!" and sends urgent signals to the brainstem.
and what happens to the logic center, the frontal cortex?
The frontal cortex is the fire chief, the planning department. But during extreme stress, survival is priority one. The amygdala essentially silences the frontal cortex. Its function is drastically reduced.
Which is why people can't think rationally or why they're speechless in the moment.
Exactly. The thinking computer went offline to save power for the physical alarm system.
So they weren't being illogical. The logic center was just suppressed. Right. But here's the problem that lingers. The nervous system learns to associate cues, that light, that sound, that smell, with the danger. Later, when you encounter those cues again, the amygdala, that overzealous smoke detector, screams danger all over again.
And triggers the whole fight, flight, freeze response, even though the situation is completely safe.
Precisely. These are false alarms. And they reinforce that feeling of being in continuous danger, which of course drives even more intense avoidance. You start avoiding things because your body genuinely believes there's a predator around the corner.
This biological mechanism brings us full circle back to the psychological component, how trauma shatters our beliefs and creates these mental roadblocks.
These stuck points. Many of us operate on this comforting idea of the just world belief.
The idea that the world is fair, good things happen to good people, bad things to bad people.
Trauma is a sledgehammer to that foundation. It proves the world is unpredictable and that terrible things can happen to anyone. It creates immense cognitive dissonance.
So you desperately try to reestablish a sense of control.
And how do you do that? You question what you should have done differently? If you can find a flaw in your own action, then you can believe you can prevent the next disaster. And that's where self-blame is born.
So recovery isn't just about the memory fading. It's about changing the fundamental interpretation of what happened.
That is the absolute core of it. Trauma changes how you think about yourself, others, and the world. And the stuck points are those specific beliefs: I should have known better, I am a bad person. that generate those persistent negative emotions that prevent recovery.
They're the mental cement.
They are. And this is where we have to differentiate between two types of emotions, because not all sadness is created equal here.
Okay.
We have to distinguish between natural emotions and manufactured emotions. Natural emotions are the universal reactions to the event. Fear when you're in danger, sadness over a loss. They're tied to the facts, and when they're processed, they dissipate.
And manufactured emotions.
Those are the heavy, persistent feelings. Excessive guilt, deep shame, prolonged anger, and they result directly from the stuck points, from your interpretations of the event, not the facts themselves.
They're the fuel for the emotional fire that keeps burning, and the only way to stop it is to take away the fuel, the stuck points.
Let's use the example from the material about Matt, the man who was robbed at gunpoint. His natural emotion during the robbery was terror, fear for his life. That fear, if processed, would have dissipated once he was safe.
But the sources say he felt this deep, crippling shame afterward. He thought, I acted like a coward, and I should have fought back.
That shame is the manufactured emotion. It's based entirely on his stuck point, this belief that a man should fight back no matter what. The fact is, freezing was an involuntary survival response. His system saved his life, but his beliefs classified that action as a moral failure.
Wow. So the shame wasn't caused by the robbery itself. It was caused by the narrative he applied to his own actions. He felt shame over a belief, not the event.
Exactly. He wasn't stuck on the money being taken. He was stuck on his self-assessment of cowardice. If you can challenge that interpretation, that freezing is a legitimate survival response, not a failure, the foundation for the shame collapses.
Okay, so if identifying these stuck points is the first real step once avoidance is reduced, how does someone even begin that process?
The sources introduce a really powerful tool called the impact statement. It helps you articulate not just what happened, but what you think about what happened. It focuses on how the event affected your core beliefs.
Beliefs about safety, trust, control.
Esteem, intimacy, all of it. It's an exercise designed to pull that interpretation out of your subconscious and into the light.
It forces you to actually look at those self-blaming narratives like, I should have known better, or if only I hadn't gone there.
It moves you from, I feel awful, to, I feel awful because I believe I am completely powerless. Once that belief is identified, it can be tested against the facts, and that opens the door.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for someone listening? What's the big takeaway from our deep dive today?
That recovery is fundamentally about confronting avoidance, yes, but its true power is in processing your beliefs. It means recognizing that trauma created a narrative, often a false one, that everything is dangerous and that you have no control. The facts have to be accepted, but the interpretation can and must be challenged.
The memory will always be part of your history. But the goal is to shift that internal dialogue, to challenge the stuck points that keep that emotional fire burning long after the emergency is over.
It's about accepting the full, complex reality of what happened, including the reality of how your own body fought to keep you alive. The goal is to process and accept what happened in a way that reflects the full reality of the event, not just the worst-case interpretation your traumatized brain assigned to it.
So if recovery means changing how you think about the event, not the memory itself, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What core belief about yourself or the world would change the most if you chose to accept the full, complex reality of the situation, rather than the trauma's most negative interpretation of it?